Good evening. Good evening. My name is Eugene Hernandez from the Film Society of Lincoln Center. Welcome to the Walter Reed Theater for the latest in our series of screenings counting down to the New York Film Festival. This year is the 50th New York Film Festival, and so we've been spending every week since last year's festival counting down to the festival with a screening. And just as a quick sort of promo for some of the screenings that are coming up, next week we'll have Zhang Yimou's film Judao. The following week, My Own Private Idaho, Gus Van Zant's film. The Piano by Jane Campion is coming up. Steve James will be here to talk with you and share a screening of Hoop Dreams in early June. A lot of screenings coming up in this series every week, counting down to the New York Film Festival. 1989 was a really important year for a lot of reasons, not just for the New York Film Festival, but for documentary. On a personal note, this film we're about to see tonight was the very first documentary I ever saw in a movie theater, and it opened my eyes to documentary, and it introduced not only myself but audiences worldwide and film critics and other documentarians to an amazing filmmaker who's here with us tonight to introduce the film and to participate in a Q&A after. Please join me in welcoming Michael Moore.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. And did you go to see other documentaries after that? Oh, all right, good. Thank you. Well, I'm really honored that the Film Society of Lincoln Center had picked this film to be one of their 24 films they're showing leading up to the 50th anniversary of the film festival, which is a great landmark year for this great festival. And you've probably shown over 1,000 movies, I think, is what they were telling me. So, it was. Without this festival, I don't know if you would have seen any of my other movies. Seriously, because it was the screening here that the Warner Brothers people happened to be in the audience, and they ended up distributing the movie. So, I'm always been very grateful to the New York Film Festival, and I look forward to talking to you or Richard and taking your questions afterwards. So I haven't seen this movie in quite a while. So I just want to say I'm going to be about 25 years younger here, but I have started to walk. So and I have all my hair. So that's about all I can say. Anyways, enjoy the movie. It's something very personal to my wife and I. This film was our statement, having grown up in Flint, Michigan, and unfortunately, it has not gotten better. This film will actually make it look like the salad days compared to now. So, but we'll talk about that afterwards. Thank you very much.
Again, thank you for being here. Please silence your cell phones and other electronic devices if you don't mind. We're about to get started, and as Michael mentioned, we'll be back for a Q&A after the screening. Thanks a lot.
The one, the only, Michael Moore.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wow, looking at it today, I just kept on thinking, do we know more now, or do we know different, or is it I can remember being myself shocked by all the deindustrialization, which I kind of knew, but when you saw it, and now it just seems like this is, we're way beyond this in a sense.
Yeah. We are. We're in some deep shit. And I made this film 23 years ago. It came out in the hopes that what we have now wouldn't happen. But I had a hard time at that time getting people to listen to it. And I have to say, my wife is here in the back, and it's very hard for us to watch this film still. In fact, we haven't watched it in some time. The last time we tried to watch it, some festival had us or whatever, and We lasted for about 5 minutes and we had to leave. So 5 minutes into the film, my wife started crying again just now, which I had tears in my eyes, and I said, let's just try to get through this. If we just, because we can't. It's so tragic on so many levels. I mean, when I made that film, there were still 50,000 people working in Flint for General Motors. 50,000. I mean, yes, in '89. Yeah, they lost 30,000 jobs. There were 50,000 left. There are 4,000 left now. So it is. You can get an app on your iPhone and listen to the Flint police radio at night. Not that you'd want to do that, but we listen to it every now and then just because it's so surreal, because it's just a non-stop assault of words coming in over the radio about this happening, that happening, this person being shot, this person being kidnapped, this person being abused. It's just the worst. So, and I don't know if you weren't here at the beginning, but I just wanted to thank you personally. I was nobody from Flint, Michigan. I knew nobody in the movie business. I didn't have an uncle who was an agent. I was on unemployment myself. I was getting $98 a week from the Michigan Employment Security Commission, and my wife and I, we were living in D.C. at the time, and brought the film up, all the cans and the reels, up to you guys here at Lincoln Center. It was like on August 1st, I think. It was the day that Sex, Lies, and Videotape opened, because it opened across the street at the old, was that the
Cinema Studio.
Cinema Studio. And so you guys watched it in here, or not here, but over
in Magno.
Right. While we watched Soderbergh's first film, and you're selecting this film, obviously not just changed my life, but gave someone like me who. The public never hears from us, those of us who come from the working class. I have a high school education, that's it. You weren't supposed to hear from me or anybody that looks like me. And the fact that I got to have that is in such large part, obviously, due to you in that moment, that night when you played it here at Alice Tully. And at the end, people stood and applauded. I remember Joanna Koch coming up to me afterwards saying, I think the ovation went for like 8 minutes, and she said, that's the record for the New York Film Festival. She said, it was longer than Kurosawa's. And I said to her, I don't know if that's really a good thing. I know, but the Warner Brothers people were in the audience that night, and they could not believe people just would not sit down for 8 minutes, and they walked out of it, and they ended up. It became the first documentary ever to receive a mass distribution by a Hollywood studio in multiplexes, shopping mall cinemas. They put it in 1,300 theaters. That had never happened before.
Well, when they write the history of American documentary, they'll say the sort of age of documentary we're in began with Roger and Me. That was really the film that sort of showed people not only that you can make a documentary that can play to a wide audience, but that you could make it in a very different, very personal way. So we owe a lot to you, Michael.
Well, thanks for saying that. It was, well... It was so amazing to me, too, because I didn't know anything about making a movie, and I really had to teach myself this. And I mean, I love the movies.
I mean, if you can imagine, it's hard to imagine, but if you were now going to make Roger and Me, or a film in Flint, what would you do? What would you do different that you didn't do then, or that you did do then?
Oh, wow. I wouldn't change a frame of this film, first of all. I'm very proud of it, and it probably remains my favorite film of all the films I've made. Maybe it's just because it was the first, and because I had to learn to make a film while I was making this film, and I was taught by someone who gave me a couple of weeks really of his time. He came to Flint and showed me how to operate the camera and the sound, and I tell this story about him in my book that came out last fall. And and there was all this controversy after the film came out about how I chose to make this film. And again, that was another thing that was very different. People were very used to the very traditional documentary form. Everything is in chronological order, and it runs just like that. And I never really liked documentaries. I really thought they felt like medicine, and I didn't know why one would go to a theater to see one, and I didn't want to make medicine. I didn't want to make castor oil, and so I thought I'm going to make something that I'd like to see on a Friday night in the movie theater that I could, eat popcorn to. And so I structured it in the way that I decided to structure it to tell the story I wanted to tell, while making sure that every fact in the film was absolutely correct. And so, and of course, Fox News and the right wing, I have to deal with them constantly on this stuff. But I take a lot of care and concern about the facts of my films, because I'm trying to make a political argument, and if I screw up on any of that, then I'm going to lose the argument. So I have so much invested in that. It's just very important to me. So really, it was. I think people now, they finally got used to. But I was, whenever you're the first at doing something, you're gonna, and so I was taking documentary into a different way of an art form, and we were talking. There were people backstage or here beforehand. It was just like on IMDb. It shows that before Roger and Me, in the history of film, there were like 4 or 5 movies that had grossed $1 million or more. And then since Roger and Me, after Roger and Me, there have been 108 films that have grossed $1 million or more. And so I take a lot of personal pride in that I was able to help kick the door open to get other documentary filmmakers through that door, so that their films would have that kind of exposure to an audience.
And also, to just get away from that so-called, myth of objectivity. That was what was great, for me about this, was you were making an argument. You're saying, look at this. I think this sucks. This is terrible.
Right. And I was not trying to cover it up by trying to pretend to be objective. I was actually admitting I'm very subjective. I am biased. It doesn't mean I have a right to I have to get all the facts right. But then I present my opinion. In my opinion, I could be right or wrong. I think I'm right. It's my opinion, but I may not be right. So, but that was if you remember, that was very difficult for people to sort of wrap their heads around, because we were so used to that other sort of, the documentary. You must tell one side of the other. In fact, I'm a juror. I'm sorry about wearing the Tribeca Film Festival hat.
Yeah. What about that?
I just. You know what? Actually, I'm a juror this week at the Tribeca Film Festival for the documentaries. And so I was there, and they were taking the picture of all the jurors, and I had a Sundance hat on, and they took the hat off my head. They took the hat off my head and put this one on. And then I come here to the New York Film Festival, and I don't have enough hats for all this. But I don't know what I was saying about that, but I just think documentaries. It changed, and it's. I hope it's been for the good. I know what I was going to say. I was watching a documentary there at the festival a couple days ago. The director, it's about the people who the Texas Board of Education, where they took Jefferson out of the textbooks. It's really a scary film. It's. But he was given great access to the conservatives on the board, and they let him do. And everybody said it was so great that you were fair and you were showing the other side. And I just sat there thinking, well, he's not really why he's doing it. He's like, I believe that you should let the other, like the GM lobbyist, the more you can get the other side to talk, the better. And the less, you don't need to just keep repeating what you believe in, but they'll make the case for you if you let them talk. But this whole idea of being fair in a document, if I made a documentary about slavery, would you or Film Comment or somebody say, now, Mike, you didn't give the pro-slavery position on this. You didn't give equal time to those, or I'm making a film about women's rights. You left out the people who don't think women should be able to vote. Why aren't they in there? Sometimes Yeah, well, I think we're all subjective people. We have our opinions, and some issues, I think, don't have two sides morally. They have one side, and I think it's okay to say that. And the more you can show the other side, that's good. But why pretend that you're anything else?
Well, I think it goes along with that, call it the myth of the liberal media, that somehow all our media is so liberal and we have to, safeguard against it. And, when you came out, it was suddenly, look, there's an example, and people jumped on that.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And I've been a poster boy for Rush Limbaugh and Fox News and all the conservative media.
Hey, Rush is having a tough time now.
I know. Don't pick on him. I know. Right. But I for a long time I said, why are they picking on me? Why are they after me? Why are they? And then I've kind of, after, I don't know, 10 years, it probably dawned on me that what they're upset about, I think, is that those of us on the left have had a difficult time in the last 30 years reaching a wide mainstream American audience. And I came along and was able to get my work, my left work, into the mainstream of middle America. That fucked them up, I think. It just like, how did he's supposed to be over there with Noam Chomsky and everybody, where only the left, it's the church of the left. They all talk to each other. And now, but I was talking to Flint, Michigan, or Gary, Indiana, or St. Louis, Missouri, and I think that was like, holy shit, we've got to do whatever we can to, put the clamp down on this, because they were just too used to, I think those of us of my political persuasion, just talking amongst ourselves, certainly after the 60s, after the Vietnam War.
What was the reaction internationally? I mean, I know the film played widely, but did you have a chance to actually go and show it to audiences in Europe or South America? And how did they look at this? I mean, it's not the America they're used to.
They were quite shocked. And what was very interesting is that because it was '89, we did your festival in September, and then we were invited to the Leipzig Film Festival in November. So my buddy Rod and I, we fly into Berlin, and I think it was the night before we landed, the first people were chipping away on the wall, the very first night. And we just happened to be there, and because we were going to drive to Leipzig from Berlin. We decided to stay a couple days in Berlin because we were kind of early for the festival, and so we just went down there and they gave us hammers and chisels, and we were just like chiseling away on the wall with the very first group of people. But so then 3 months later, the Berlin Film Festival showed the movie, and we were there for that night when they lifted the first cement thing off the wall, and you were probably there too, I would assume, yeah. And they had screenings, in East Berlin, and so I showed this film to people in East Berlin who were essentially going from communism to capitalism. And now this was supposed to be such a happy time. And then I show them what capitalism brings you. And they're like, oh, what do we do? What do we do?
What are those bits of the wall?
Well, I remember saying to them, I said, actually, we're looking to you, to Eastern Europe, to invent the third way. Maybe that's what you need to do is take those few things of capitalism that are good, in terms of the inventiveness of the individual that comes up with a light bulb or whatever, and that respects that, but still, don't lose your safety net for your people, because this is where they end up. And then we got invited to Moscow, to St. Petersburg, and then we showed the film there. And I just remember our whole Eastern European tour being a very depressing moment for the people in the audience, because they were being so happy about what was changing. So, but yeah, I think that was and of course I had a very large foreign audience after that for my films, and probably the largest. The largest box office wise was obviously Fahrenheit, but Bowling for Columbine, I think, touched people more in other countries probably than any other film, because it's truly something nobody else in this world understands, why we kill so many of our own people and what is our fascination with guns. And so when we traveled, with that film, I think that really saw the people feeling just completely lost, not understanding America.
Get some questions from all of you. Yes, right here. You, sir. Yeah, gentlemen. Sorry. Questions about the financing for Roger and me.
I didn't even know what that word meant. So well, there was no financing. There was a lot of people, right, giving us $25 or $50. I sold the house that I had my newspaper in. It was a 4-bedroom house. I got $27,000 for it. I put that into the movie. I sued the magazine that fired me in San Francisco and won $60,000 from them. I put that all into the movie. We had bingo games in Flint, and we used the profits on the bingo games to put that into the movie. And that was about it. And when I had a sort of a rough cut, the Flint Council for the Arts gave me like $3,000. The Michigan Council for the Arts gave me $8,000. And then the only really large check was $20,000 from the J. Roderick MacArthur Foundation, not the big MacArthur, but the baby MacArthur Foundation. And that was pretty much it. When you name, like you might have seen Ed Asner's name there, but that's just because he heard about the project and he sent us a check for $200. You know, we didn't know who he was. I mean, we knew who he was, but we had no contact with him, so we thanked him in the credits. So yeah, that was about it. It cost us about $150,000 to make from beginning to end, and I was about another $200,000 in debt. For instance, Sound One down the street here. I couldn't afford to do the mix, and Bill Nisselson, who I'm sure you remember, no longer with us. I took the film there one day. They, again, didn't know who I was. I asked them for a couple of hours. He brought Lee Dichter in, the great sound mixer of all of Woody Allen's and a whole bunch of other films. And they sat there, and they were in tears watching it. And at the end of it, they said, "We'll mix this film for free for you." And at that time, it was like a $12,000 thing. I couldn't believe it. So as soon as I got the money from Warner Brothers, I wrote them a big check, and I did that for all the people that helped me.
Irwin, I think, was also.
And Duart was incredible. Irwin Young, it just kept developing film for me, and I didn't know who I was, but he saw what was there, and he said his father was an old socialist or communist or whatever, and he just really was proud to be part of this, and so he developed the film for me over there in West 55th Street. So it was we were very lucky to have a lot of angels that helped us out over the years.
Yes, over here, sir. Did the film have any effect on Roger Smith's tenure at GM?
I don't know. That's a good question. I've always wondered that because about 5 months after the film was released, he retired. And I thought it was a little early, but I don't know whether it was because of the whole, GM, they knew I was making this film, obviously, by the time I was finishing it, and they even sent somebody to the Telluride Film Festival, because that was the very first place we were going to show it. And from what I heard from people at GM years later is that their scout phoned back and said, don't worry about this. It's just a documentary, and it's not that well made, and it's things are out of focus. So they didn't really see it coming. They weren't really ready for it when it hit, and I think that gave us certainly the leg up to not have them. But so Roger Smith, yeah. So no, he retired. I never got to meet him. I almost ran into him once at Detroit Metro Airport. He got off a plane, I got on, but missed him, and unfortunately he's passed away. So,
what about the UAW? Was there ever any union reaction?
Yes, early on the union did not like the film because I essentially say in the film that the union's been in bed with management and they haven't really been doing what they need to do to fight for this. They couldn't see the writing on the wall that GM was going to pull out. And that business model that GM was developing, throw people out of work, but then wonder who's going to buy. Now nobody asks who's going to buy the cars. Once you throw all the middle class out of work, who's going to buy your cars? Nobody. And so during when the film came out, I'm trying to give this lesson in capitalism, guys, you have to create your consumer base by paying your workers a good amount of money, because what workers do is they spend that money, and then you get to make more money. and then, but the whole thing was broken, and it took another 20 years. But then GM went under. The Tribeca Film Festival sent us over in one of their Tribeca cars. You don't have those, by the way. Yeah.
We give our filmmakers subway fare, and they're happy to accept it. Let me tell you.
No, they treat everybody really. This is one of the greatest honors of your life, is to be selected by this festival. But they sent us over in a Chevy Suburban, and my wife was saying, "Wow, they've really improved this, because it used to be a real piece of junk, and nothing was rattling, and the dome light worked and everything." And he said, "Yeah," since the government took over, they've been making better cars. I said, "Well, do you realize what you just said? The government involvement actually has given us better cars that are now selling better." What does that say about free enterprise? Of course, they don't really believe in free enterprise. They don't want competition. They would prefer to be the only car company and have the old Soviet model, where you have only one newspaper in town, one car company in the country, fewer airlines. Everything, they're trying to. It's all been collapsed into us having fewer and fewer choices, because they don't really like competition and free enterprise.
Questions? Let me see. Ma'am, yes.
It's not only about this film, it's a general question. I'm from Colombia, and I'm really interested, I think you're really brave, in my country, to do a documentary like this. It's there's people in danger because of this, they're threatened because they're brave. So have you ever thought of doing, the other side of this documentary? You just mentioned this thing of Mexico, they went to Mexico because it's cheaper there, and
Yeah.
the impact that this kind of company can
Yeah.
have in Latin America,
Question is, has Michael ever considered doing a film that would show the other side? What happens when GM brings their factory to Mexico or Honduras or wherever, and what goes on there?
And she mentioned that she's from Colombia. Our collective apologies to the government and the people of Colombia. No, I know, but it was a moment for Colombia to shine. Our president was there. There's this great summit. Nobody ever talked about the summit or anything, and sadly we got distracted. But no, I have not made that film, but I did do that a lot on my TV show. I had 2 TV shows in the 90s. One was called TV Nation, the other was called The Awful Truth. And the very first episode of TV Nation was on NBC. In the first episode, I fired everybody on the show, and then moved the show to Reynosa, Mexico, and I hired cameramen for 50 cents an hour and joke writers for 20 cents an hour and things like that, and we produced the whole show with Mexican labor from Reynosa. So I mean, I've done many other things like that because I care about that. And I remember us being told at that time, 20, 30 years ago, it's good that we're building these factories there, because in 30 years, Mexico's going to look like the United States. The standard of living will be just like Bloomfield Hills, and of course we know that is not what happened. So.
Are the TV Nations available on DVD?
They are not.
Why not?
There's a lot of rights issues with the music and stuff, which is too bad. But
They're so great, Michael.
Well, thank you. No, I'm so proud of if you actually somebody has been surreptitiously putting them up on YouTube. I have no idea who's doing this, but it's so you have, if you want to just go on YouTube, you can see a lot of these episodes of TV Nation and the things that we did from the,
That's a shame. That was really terrific. Other questions? Yes, ma'am, right here. You're.
Hi, Michael. I love all of your movies. I think you bring so much attention to things that we all need to know about, and we're just too ignorant. I know that you were a big supporter of Occupy Wall Street, and I just want to know, what do we do as citizens to try to change the way we think collectively?
What do we do next, Michael?
Yes, I have been very supportive of Occupy Wall Street, and I'll tell you, it's been one of the happiest years for me to see, after 20-some years of making films about corporate America and Wall Street and the banks. And my last film, which you premiered here at Ellis Tully, Capitalism: A Love Story, where the film ends with me going down to Wall Street and wrapping crime scene tape around the New York Stock Exchange. And walking away and saying that's my last movie until I see you watching it rise up. I can't do this by myself, and I'm not going to. I'm going to go have a life. So, and I really thought I'd have like a good 5 to 10 years to just sort of fuck off and do, write a musical or, join the Ice Capades or something. And man, so when this happened back in September, I tell you, I've just been so happy and supportive of it and part of it, and what I think people can do is, I think, politically right now, this year, we have to get the House has to get out of the hands of the Republicans. The Senate has to stay in the hands of the Democrats. Obama has to be reelected, although I have many criticisms about him, and I wish he'd done a lot more, a lot faster, and he pissed away a lot of, I think, good opportunities at the beginning when we had control of the House and Senate. But nonetheless, don't underestimate the fact that Romney can win. He's from my state. I know we're Americans, and I'm telling you, it's the most amazing thing is 35% approval rating, and yet he's polling 47%. So clearly people are of a mind that they are going to vote against Obama, no matter who the Republican nominee is. And the polls are showing it's very close. So I would take it very seriously. And I think the things you can do in your daily life is just to talk to people, talk politics. This is one thing. If you're from another country, you've noticed this. If you've been in America for a while, how rarely at a bar or over dinner or whatever we have political conversations. It's a very, whereas if you travel to other countries, it's just 12-year-olds will start talking politics with you. So so I think it's important to do that and use credit unions instead of the 5 top banks, and just think of all the little things that you can do in your daily life to sort of wean ourselves off this Wall Street thing. So,
Yes, sir.
First of all, I just want to say that it's a real thrill to meet you as one of my heroes.
oh, thank you.
In 1989, I was in high school, and I went and saw. It was like me and like 5 other people at the movie theater in Omaha, Nebraska. So we saw this movie, and it just blew my mind. Tried to take a date, didn't happen. But there was 2 things that happened after Roger and Me that I thought was very interesting. One was you had an unofficial sequel called Pets Are Me that my friends and I were really excited to see, but it debuted on PBS I think once, and then we never saw it again. And then you had an appearance on Phil Donahue's show, which had some real mixed reactions when I read about it in the newspaper afterwards, and I wanted to know what those 2 things were about.
Okay. Everybody heard that, right?
Yeah. Pets Are Meat, which was
Yeah.
kind of a little bit of a sequel to Roger and Me, which was actually at the New York Film Festival, and Michael's appearance on the Phil Donahue show.
And thank you for going to see it in high school and sneaking in to see it because they rated it R, which really bummed us out. Every one of my movies has been rated R except Sicko, and I don't understand that.
The bunny sequence?
It's the bunny sequence and the woman being evicted at the end saying "motherfucker," and that did it. In Fahrenheit, it's showing the destruction of dead bodies with our bombs that we blew people up. So, anyways, and what was the problem? You couldn't convince a date to go see it, or?
Yeah, no, she just wasn't interested in the documentary, even though I kept telling her that this could be something different.
Okay, I want to tell you, if I say something here, it'll just stay here, right? Okay. All right. Promise? First time I ever talked to George Clooney. This is like years and years and years ago. He said to me, I got to tell you something. He said, I use Roger and Me for dating. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, when I'm like interested in somebody and I'm thinking, they might be nice to have a girl as a girlfriend or to date or whatever. I always, on the first, if not the first, definitely by the second date, they have to sit and watch Roger and Me with me. If they get it, then there's another date. If they don't get it, it's over. It was kind of the coolest thing to hear. It's not exactly 2 thumbs up, but it's something. I don't know, but it was. Pets or Meat, I did do a half-hour sequel. It's only been here and on PBS, and we are going to release that at some point. We did a follow-up about 4 years after I made the film. And what was the other part of the question?
The Phil Donahue.
Oh, Phil Donahue. Phil Donahue came to Flint, and so he did 2 full days there, 2 full shows with me on a stage and 2,000 people in the audience. And it was about probably 3/4 pro me, and then the quarter that were against me. The country club people and the Chamber of Commerce and all that were very vocal and screaming, and it was it was very much very chaotic. But it's fascinating. I don't know if it's on YouTube, but it's fascinating to watch.
Time for a couple more. Yes, gentlemen. The back.
I'll answer shorter so you can
Yeah.
get people in here.
T-shirt. Yes, you right.
I don't know if you can see it. I'm wearing a Michigan State t-shirt. Years ago when I was in college, I'm not a filmmaker. I'm graduating medical school, but I'm just started shooting a documentary on ovarian cancer. I'm wondering if you have any pearls of advice on how to make a good documentary for a non-filmmaker.
And why have you chosen ovarian cancer as your subject?
Well, I'm going into obstetrics and gynecology starting July 1st at the community hospital in Wyckoff Heights in Brooklyn, which is not doing too well financially, but I've seen and dealt with a lot of patients that ovarian cancer is one of the few cancers that don't get screening methods. So when women are usually diagnosed at stage 3, stage 4, and it's already spread.
Yeah.
And they have less than 50% mortality in 5 years.
Yeah.
It's very sad. So it's kind of used to raise awareness. I'm hosting a fundraiser in June 14th to try to raise some money and awareness.
Well, thank you for doing that, first of all. Secondly, nobody wants to see that movie. I mean, I don't mean to be harsh about this, but let me suggest just tweaking it a bit. I mean, I assume you're making it because you want people to see it, right? Right, but I'm going to say, because again, if we were sitting in Paris right now, or Berlin, or London, or Dublin, they don't have this thing where people put off going to the doctor that we have. And a lot of it in our country is because people can't afford it, they don't have health insurance, or they do have health insurance and their health insurance won't approve this procedure or this thing, and they've got to fight with you. Everyone here knows this, right? You either yourself or your family member or a neighbor. And I think that's you're right. If it's caught soon enough, you can live. And so I would really focus on that one question. And I don't think it's just because people are, I feel something here, I want to think it's something else, and I don't. And that's true. I mean, that is human nature. You want to hope for the best. If you heard a loud bang right now, you wouldn't think it was a gun going off. Your brain would start to go, oh, that was a car misfiring or a tire or something. You know, we always, that was just a little plane. That wasn't an attack. That first plane that went into the tower. Even though we who live here, 8 years before that, we've only had one terrorist incident of a foreign entity blowing something up here in the city, and that was at that building. Yet still, when we heard about the first plane, most of us didn't think that was anything other than an accident. It's like, I'm just always amazed at how the human psyche really wants to look at the bright side of life, and not because if you go that other way, it gets dark, and you don't want to go there. So I don't know if this is making any sense to you, but I think that for the people who are afraid and don't go, scaring people, I never think that really works. I think that you're right to get the information out there. You could live if you catch it in time, but I would really focus on how many women die in this country every year because they can't afford to get the treatment, or afraid that they're going to get socked with some big bill. I mean, the Congress did their own study of this last year, and they said approximately 45,000 people a year die in this country simply because they don't have health insurance. That's the only thing that has killed them, because they've put off going to the doctor and it's too late. They think about 45,000, whereas the number in France or Canada or any place else is 0. Nobody in Canada says, I can't afford to go to the doctor. It's just a crazy idea. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the other part of this too is that we have an enforced ignorance in our society that starts with our schools and how little money and effort and attention we pay to them. And essentially our system is structured to keep people as stupid as possible for as long as possible. And if you can keep people ignorant, it's easier to manipulate them with fear and blame of something other, whatever. And I think, we're ignorant of science, we're ignorant of biology, we're ignorant of a lot of things. And when you don't know things and you haven't learned that in school, it's something they should be teaching in school. But we've spent too much time on this. But I thank you for attempting to do this, and good luck with it.
Time for a couple more. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Huge fan. You have a lot of fan there. I'm a student here at filmmaking, and I would like to know, how do you deal with your emotions during the shooting? Because sometimes, like the lady that didn't want to talk, and things like, how do you deal with that?
This viewer is from Rio de Janeiro and big fan of Michael's work, and wants to know is, while he's shooting his films, how does he deal with his own emotions? Because obviously he feels for these issues and for the people, and how does that affect his work as a filmmaker?
That's a great question. It affects it a lot. I have a hard time making these movies. I do not enjoy them. I dread doing them. I don't really say this publicly too much, but I don't. I remember when we started making Sicko, and we went on the internet and we asked people to send us their horror stories of dealing with insurance companies, and oh my God, we got so much stuff from people who are dying. Please help us, please help us. And we went and we were just trying to do things, and we were actually writing checks to some people. We just, because how can you go and film somebody and they're dying and not just let, so we just, all of us on that film, we really had it had a bad effect on us personally. Making this film obviously was very difficult. We filmed that eviction on during the day on Christmas Eve, and we all went back in the van, the crew and me, and everybody just broke down and started crying because we tried to. The woman said she owed $150, so everyone reached in their pockets. We came up with $150. We said to the sheriff, "Here, let her stay. It's friggin' Christmas." Friggin' wasn't used back then, and he said, "If you don't put that money away, I'm going to have to arrest you for trying to bribe me." And so we put the money away. He threw the Christmas tree and the presents out, and we went in the van. We started crying, and so just on a lark, to lift people's spirits, I said, "Hey, we've got the equipment for the rest of the day. Why don't we run down to Detroit and do one more scene at the GM building, or it's probably closed because it's Christmas Eve. Let's just go down there and we'll shoot something. Come on, let's go get Roger on Christmas." Yeah, okay. So we get in the car. We drive an hour down Detroit. We pull up. There's all these TV trucks there, and they're getting ready to give this speech, this Christmas speech. I was like, wow. So we walked in with Channel 7 News in Detroit, and and I only had one roll of film, 10 minutes of 16 millimeter film. And I said to the cameraman, he went and he's going to go set up with the other cameras on the riser. I said, "Okay, look, they handed out the speech he was going to give to all the press beforehand. So I got to read the speech. So I marked it and I said, okay, you film this, 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 and don't miss Dickens." And then when you're done with all that, leave at least 90 seconds because I'm going to make a run for him. I was going to lunge toward him. And so he films it, and he's done. Smith comes down. I start, and you see these two guys. They're actually the security, and you can't see it on camera, but they've locked my arms. They're holding me back. And I got as close as I did to him, that what you saw. But we got something incredible that we didn't, and it dealt with our own emotional thing that day. But then we drove back to Flint there. Now it's 6 o'clock at night. Let's get some shots of that factory. That's the last shot in the film, and they were tearing it down. A bunch of ambulances and police cars go by us, whole line of them. Like, wow, what the hell's going on? Well, let's go check this out. So we get in the car, we follow them to a restaurant about 2 miles away. where the Buick executives, when I say executives, it's a highfalutin word, but for Flint it just means the foreman and the white collar people, were having their Christmas party. And I think it was the vice president of labor relations or whatever, I forget exactly what his title was, but he had just gone into the party with a .357 Magnum, blew his girlfriend's head off, and then ran back out into the parking lot, put the gun in his mouth, and blew his head off. And we got there, and there's this carnage, and outside the restaurant they had a loudspeaker with like a really tinny loudspeaker playing, "We wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas." So we filmed all this, and it was, we decided not to end the film with it because it was just like, it was so depressing, and we were so depressed by the whole thing. And I didn't want you to leave the theater depressed. I want you to leave angry. I want you to leave like feeling like you should do something. That's why a lot of the humor's in the film, because it's there just as a release valve on the pressure cooker, because if you just pound people for 2 hours with all this sadness, you leave paralyzed and you leave thinking there's nothing I can do. I don't want you to leave that way. I want you to leave thinking that you can do something. You do have some power. So yeah, thanks for asking that question. It does affect us a lot.
Michael, I think that's all we have time for. But
Okay.
before you go, we have a present for you.
Oh. The hat.
Please wear your Film Society of Lincoln Center hat in good health.
Oh, and it fits. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank
and
you
thank
very
you,
much.
Richard, for all your years here.